I stood at the edge of the cemetery, the wind cold against my cheeks, my hands gripping the stone railing like it could hold me together. Behind me, the empty seats where my parents should have been stared back like silent witnesses. I had called them hours earlier, my voice breaking, delivering the news of the accident that had taken my husband and our 2 children. "Today is your sister's birthday," my father said. His voice was calm, steady, and utterly unshaken. "We can't come." I remember the precise moment I realized the depth of their betrayal, not just the absence, but the deliberate choice. My heart fractured into something sharper than grief. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vanish. Instead, I breathed, collected myself, and let a quiet fury settle in like a living thing inside me. Months earlier, I had believed in them. My parents were the kind of people whose smiles were warm, whose advice was steady. They had attended every recital, every dinner, every milestone, and I had trusted them completely. My sister, bright, spoiled, oblivious, had been the golden child. I had loved her too, in the way you love someone you forgive instinctively. That trust made their betrayal cut deeper than the accident ever could. The signs came slowly at first: canceled visits, half-hearted sympathy in passing phone calls, little dismissals disguised as concern. But it wasn't until I overheard my father laughing about me on the phone with a friend, laughing about my grief, my suffering, that the mask fell completely. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I began to plan. I became precise, methodical. Every conversation they had, every action they took, was a thread I could pull. I tracked finances, alliances, and reputations. Every slight, every insult, every omission became a data point in my ledger. I was no longer a grieving widow, I was a strategist, and grief had sharpened my mind into a blade. I started small: subtle moves, a tip to a journalist, a leak to a lawyer, whispers in circles that mattered. I dismantled their sense of safety piece by piece. A few months in, I watched them squirm as their carefully curated lives began to fracture. One misstep, one careless word from them, and I was there, ready. Then came the headline. I had waited, calculated for the right moment. The story was explosive. I had discovered evidence of corporate fraud in my father's business. I had handed it to the authorities anonymously at first, just enough to ensure exposure, but carefully enough to protect myself legally. The papers didn't just report it. They tore their empire down in front of their peers, their associates, their community. I watched from my apartment, a glass of wine in hand, as panic spread through their household. Calls came in from lawyers, friends, creditors, questions they could not answer. Their faces, once so smug and untouchable, were now etched with fear. They were flailing, grasping at shadows, realizing too late that their daughter, the one they had underestimated, mocked, and abandoned, was the architect of their undoing. The confrontation came weeks later. They had begged to meet me, shame and desperation in their eyes. I welcomed them into my home with a serene smile. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't cry. I let the silence do the work. "You did all this?" my father asked, voice trembling. I nodded, deliberately slow. "You chose her over me," I said. "You chose her happiness while I buried my family." I calculated the consequences. Their guilt hung in the air, a tangible weight. And as they realized I had anticipated every lie, every move, every loophole they had counted on, they finally understood. The game had never been theirs to control. Now, months later, I sit alone in the quiet of my home. The headlines are archived, the phone silent, the threats dissolved into nothing. I feel no joy in revenge itself, only in its precision. Grief had sharpened me, betrayal had taught me patience, and justice had finally arrived. Not as chaos, but as inevitability. I survived what they could not imagine. And in the calm after the storm, I realized something vital. When they looked at me now, it was fear they saw, not weakness. They had underestimated the daughter who could endure the unimaginable and turn it into power. I pour another glass of wine. The wind brushes against the window like a whisper, and I smile quietly, savoring the silence, the triumph, and the knowledge that I am no longer the girl they abandoned. I am the storm they will never outrun.